Hello,
Okay.
everybody.
Hello, hello.
Happy Thursday.
Yes.
I had I
Thankful
had to
Thursday.
I honestly had to think twice about that. I was like,
Yeah.
"Friday?" Like,
Right,
no,
right.
no, no.
What day is today?
Yes, I've questioned that several times. I'm sure everyone has.
Yes.
Anyway, welcome. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have a dear, dear, dear friend joining me today, and I'm so happy. The beautiful Ekua Walker, who is a pediatric nurse practitioner who is an expert in working with neurodiverse kids. So I'm so happy to have you on. Welcome, Akula.
Hello. Thank you for having me. What an honor.
I know. I'm so happy. I was like, I wish this was like a cocktail hour and we were just
Yeah.
chatting and catching up, but
That's right. The next best thing.
Another time, another
Yes, yes.
time. Yes. No, I think this will be I was really happy to have you come on because I keep getting questions from people about like, okay, I'm really struggling. Here I am like quarantined at home and I'm seeing all these beautiful posts of people having this great time with their kids. And not to say that if we have a neurodiverse kid that we're not, but that
Right.
there are extra challenges when you
Sure.
have a kid and then you none of your normal things you get to do you get to do. So I thought
Right.
it would be great to have an expert on and share some tips and tricks for all of us parents who are struggling with that. So
Absolutely.
so why don't you tell everybody just a little bit more about yourself and then we'll
Sure.
get into it.
Sure. So, I love that I get to be, a pediatric nurse practitioner that kind of found development and behavior as a subspecialty in a roundabout way. I'd grown up. Growing up, I always loved working with children, babysitting, had younger siblings, and knew I wanted to work with children and loved health and healthcare as well. And as I jumped into it, I got a chance to kind of try and play with a few different things like health education is one thing that I did early on, and I love the teaching aspect of health and helping people to kind of live their best, be their best, diet, exercise, nutrition. But I also liked the assessing and diagnosing piece, from the medical side, and I worked alongside nurse practitioners who brought a lot of that together with the medicine, with the health coaching, and then there were nurse case managers, and so there were just so many different angles, psychologists, psychiatrists. I loved it all, and in over time I got to see that the nurse practitioner just brought it together in a really special way, that lined with the holistic approach that I have around health, wellness, growing and being at our best, at all, as best as we can be. So my day-to-day work is that I am at a clinic now, outpatient clinic, through Palo Alto Medical Foundation, and we have a team of about four. Physicians, myself as psychologists, and we spend a good amount of time, like over an hour with each patient, really trying to
Wow.
understand the background and the story of what's going on for the child. We do some different assessment tests to understand, when they come to us, it's because they have some kind of a delay. Something is, a milestone isn't being met, like around speech or around even motor movement or learning. And so we have some standardized tests that we can do with them to try to understand, is it, just speech delay, or is this more than speech? Are there some social aspects like, autism that we should be concerned about? Or if it's an older child, who has been thriving up until they started school, and then all of a sudden, they're having tantrums and they don't want to go to school, even though they love learning and being creative in different ways. We try to understand, is it attention and focus? Is it learning disability? Or is it anxiety? Because a lot of this
Yeah,
overlaps, and it can be hard to
absolutely.
to tell, what is going on. So then once we help the families figure that out, then we can make referrals to community providers, speech therapists. We can help them work with their school. We can help connect them with psychologists or LMFTs, and work on the emotion regulation, or come up with whatever plan that they need to help the child grow and thrive.
Awesome. I know.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where people think, "Oh, I need to find the calling that is in line with my personality." I was like,
Yes.
"I can't imagine that." You just nailed it, right? Like, you're the person I'm like, "You are the perfect person for this. You have this
Mm,
very calm energy," which is why I love you as a friend because
yeah.
I myself have ADHD and I'm not so calm. So
The yin and the yang. We balance
exactly. We
each
are
other
yin
out.
and yang, and I love that. I
Yeah,
love it. And yeah, so I think yeah, I'm excited for you to share with people kind of especially now that we're in I mean, already there's challenges, right?
right, right.
And but then we're in this time of life where all these extra stresses are on us. And that
Yeah,
of course is going to be extra hard for these kiddos. So I guess
right,
maybe
right.
I'll let you start and kind of just talk about like what you think is most useful as far as like where we should begin.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think, to begin at the beginning, I mean, we're all in this collective almost reboot, where everything is slowed down, everything that, we used to rely on and used to do and used to, kind of how we organized our lives, it's all come to a complete like stop and standstill, and it's really showing us how vulnerable we are. And how
Yeah.
vulnerable really we've always been. I mean, this could have happened really any time, but because for whatever reasons it's happening now, we can't rely on like our school system that we thought would never close, or our
Right.
healthcare system that we thought could handle anything, all of it, our governments and things that are that we thought were like could handle any issue. Now it's really everything is really distilled down to the essence, like what is really important right now. What are the basics of life that we can kind of hold on to. And so with that comes yes, a lot of uncertainty, right? And
Yeah.
I think from yesterday's show, I saw Dr. Charmaine kind of say hello. Yeah, there's so much fear and emotion around that, and so I think it's good that we all have permission. I think we can give all of ourselves permission to feel what we are feeling right now, because
Yeah.
it can be quite overwhelming. And then if we're parents, then we have our own feelings and our own reactions going on, but then our children also are there going through their own journey, and we have to be in a place where we can also be there for them and help kind of guide, and shepherd them through this season, this time.
For
um
sure.
yeah, and so I
And I
think,
think
go ahead.
oh, yeah, I was gonna say what you said, I think is really important because we know, like, our kids tend to pick up on our energy, and so and this is really big stuff, and
Yeah,
like you're saying, it really shattered, like, our perception of how things are, or for most people, I mean,
yeah,
there's those people who never thought it was there anyway, but
right.
but the people who thought,
um,
"This is I have this security blanket, or I have
yeah,
this safety net,"
yeah,
and um, being able to realizing like, "Oh, no, actually, like, it's a
yeah,
lot more vulnerable," like you're saying,
right,
and you
right.
made a good point, and Charmaine, reiterated this, of
Mhm.
as we slow down or as there's more space, it actually creates this opportunity for more anxiety because it's like we're some
Yes.
of us and I think of like we're both well, I'm no longer in Silicon Valley, but my business is,
Right,
and
right.
you are, and in Silicon Valley, it is so go, go, go that there isn't
Yeah,
the space to feel things,
right.
and now there's a lot of space.
There is, and you're right that a lot of, the routines and the structure and the run and the go and the kind of the hamster wheel, um, does, allow us to not face what's really going on sometimes. And so when we don't have all of those things to distract us from, what's really, our real, what's real and what's going on around us, then you're right. We have to be like okay with sitting with our real emotions, sitting, and trying to connect and be in tune with like help what's really going on here.
Yeah.
So that we don't miss it, because we could go through all of this and end up just back where we started, but there's likely a reason why everything had to kind of slow down and shut down, you know? It
Yeah.
was all so much. Like you pointed out, I think in the Bay Area, we do have that added layer of, you know, there's competition here. There's this, constant drive. There's so much that's amazing and produces, a lot of world-changing stuff, but it's hard to sustain,
Yeah.
and I think it's hard for our children to grow up in, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of unspoken pressures and unrealistic
Exactly.
expectations, Yeah.
Exactly. And I think even before all of this, like at Fremont Counseling Services, where my clinic that I own,
Mhm.
that we see so many kids who are already struggling with that before all of this. And so
Yes.
that's the hard thing, right? We're
Mm,
seeing all these kids already be impacted by the expectations and the pressures. And then
yeah,
especially like I think it's a challenge for all kids because we see everybody. We're a
right,
community clinic that sees everyone. But
right.
when I think about all the kids that come in, especially with ADHD or on the autistic
Mm,
spectrum, or they're having learning challenges,
yeah,
and then they're feeling this pressure of falling behind when
yeah.
there's already this immense pressure, even if you didn't have that, right?
Right, right,
So
absolutely.
so if we're starting from okay, I imagine, I have at least one child with ADHD. Like both my husband and I have ADHD. We know for certain our oldest has it. Luckily, it's, mild to moderate, but, I know the challenges that can come up with that and kind of
Mhm,
the things that we normally do to make sure, like, it
mhm,
makes the day go easier. I guess, what
yeah.
are your suggestions for people? Because now they're like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm supposed to get work done, and I'm now with my kid who needs, like, to get
Right.
off all this energy. Oh, but we can't go anywhere."
Right, right, right. There's so many factors going on right now. You're absolutely right. And some kids are like oblivious to what's going on.
Yeah.
Some kids are in a bubble or maybe they're too young to really get it. And they are like loving that everybody's home all the time. They can just
Yes.
play and, get away with anything and all of that.
That's my Ella.
All the way, to, the child that is like hyper aware
Yeah.
of the fact that everything has changed and there's, when am I going back to school and why can't I see my friends and why can't
Yeah.
we go out, go and do X like we usually do. So, I think all of our children are somewhere on that spectrum and we all as a parents, we're also on our own spectrum. So
Mhm.
we've been at this for, anywhere from just a couple of weeks to, a month. And, we're in this for the long haul, however long it kind of manifests and takes. So as far as kind of where we can start, I think being present is probably like the starting point for all of it because we can talk and do a lot of other stuff, but if we ourselves are not like grounded and present enough to really like to see kind of what our children are going through or to hear that they might be like upset about this but it's really because of that or
Yeah.
then we're going to be spinning our own wheels and getting more frustrated and feeding into the this cycle. And so Dr. Dan Siegel is really, a big leader in the kind of showing up, to be present with your children. He talks a lot about how we have to start with our own cup, right? Our
Yeah.
own, place. And I think of it like almost like a pot. We as parents, we have a big pot. We're constantly feeding our families and feeding our kids and feeding those around us and giving, giving, giving. But if our pot of soup or stew or whatever it is that you're, kind of you can envision is empty, it's like, what are you giving? What are you giving away at a certain point? And nobody's going to want that. Whatever's coming out of your empty pot, they'll be like, keep it, right? And so we have to make sure that we are starting from a place of, you know, doing as best as we can in the craziness that's going on, even if it's just taking 5 minutes in the morning, to close your eyes, meditate, pray, just breathe in. Okay, we made it to another day. We are gonna be fine, and and even if it's just a few minutes or just a few breaths,
Yeah.
really making sure to do that. So I know for me, I'm I realized that, the time that I would have been, like, getting dressed and, commuting, I could now exercise, and I can
Right.
now, spend that extra time in, meditation and prayer. And so, taking those opportunities where you can to replace maybe long commutes or short commutes or whatever, used to occupy that time and really use it as the fill the pot time for yourself. Because when you have even just a little bit to give, it's gonna be so much easier to
Yeah.
handle, what's going on around you.
Yeah, and I think something well, there's a couple pieces of that, but one is and sometimes filling your pot might be like, "I need some extra sleep," right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the foundation of it. But what I like about that is
Yeah.
it may I think sometimes people can, especially if they're in a not in a great place, they
Sure,
can be in a place where
sure,
they scoff like, "Ugh, like that's gonna make a difference,"
sure,
but we
sure.
know that it really does. And when you start to
Yeah.
especially if you do that consistently over a week or a couple
Mhm,
weeks, you're
mhm,
like, "Wow,
mhm.
that really
Yeah,
does help me and center me." And the thing is, your perspective is about the day. And I think
yeah,
that's the best part, and
I agree with you.
that's where I'm seeing people really start to spiral or get lost is they're thinking like, "Oh my god, I can't do 2 more months of this."
Right,
Well, first of
right.
all, you can because 'cause you're gonna have to.
You have a lot of
Sorry to
choice.
be it's gonna be Thursday night blunt night, that's what's coming up, but but it's also like that I mean, I've said I've mentally prepared through the end of May, and if it
Mhm,
changes, I'm gonna have to
mhm.
do some work on mentally preparing further, but
Right.
if we can take it day by day instead of looking at the bigger picture, it makes it
Yes,
much more manageable, right?
absolutely,
Yeah, so
absolutely,
I
and
love that idea.
yeah, and we as the parents, we are dealing with a lot of different things going on. We are working from home as we're trying to support the kids. We're trying to make sure everybody's getting, fed and nourished. We're, kind of having to deal with, financial things that are going on. If people are, losing jobs
Mhm.
or if you're in an area or you yourself are sick, right? The the layers of what parents have to juggle right now, is really intense. And so
It is.
I definitely acknowledge and understand that. But all we really have is this moment.
Yeah.
All we have is right here, right now. So the day is that manageable kind of chunk, that we can navigate. And starting from this moment, where we are right now, we can do it. We can make it happen. And so kind of a practical tip to go along with that would be routines are your friend. I
Yeah.
have to say that routines, even if they're not, perfect, or even if they have to be, that can ebb and flow, even if it has to be very, very loose. Early on, someone talked about, establishing a routine, and I think it's made quite the difference, I know for myself, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have children, and, if you have children, especially for, on the autism spectrum, that one of the characteristics of that is that, there's a rigidity, there is a level of, like, I have to kind of do things the same way all the time in order to feel safe or secure. Or if you have, learning or, autism or ADHD, maybe you're more spontaneous, but knowing that, the day at school is gonna flow in a certain way means that, you know what to count on. You know what you can count on, to
Yeah.
get you through that day. And oftentimes children with ADHD who have the right structures in school do amazing,
Yes.
that and thrive in that kind of a setting because of those structures and routines. And so we were fortunate, our school kind of gave us a recommended daily schedule.
Yeah.
So they kind of put it in our lap, and so we could just adopt it. And my husband and I were both on the same page. Okay, let's jump into this. And I can, like, share a couple, like, kind of the main ideas of it. And of course, you can go online and find specific ones. But starting off, they have a morning meeting, so the, like, 9 o'clock, there's a check-in with the teacher, or with the parents, whoever does that, is kind of where the learning starts. But of course, before that, maybe 8 o'clock, you're gonna, get up, get dressed. We know that getting dressed helps you feel like, I'm going to accomplish something today,
Mhm.
have a good nourishing breakfast. We know that, healing starts with what we, kind of bring into our bodies, including the food. So, using it as an opportunity to kind of get the day off to a good start. If you can connect with each other, we do a morning prayer just to, kind of, unite us in the day ahead. So whatever you can do before that, the hard start that you have maybe for academics, or the rough start that you have, take that
Yeah.
time. If you have time or like to go for a walk. I've seen that. Some families will do like a family morning walk with a dog or whatever first, and then you have
Mhm.
your designated maybe, an hour or so of like academic time, learning time, and then you have your recess. Maybe, you can ask your kids, to be involved in getting the schedule together. When was recess at school? Okay, let's do our recess or our free, playtime movement time at, 10:15, 10:30. Let's have a good healthy snack, and then we'll come back for another hour or so of learning time, academic time, and then we had lunchtime at school was around 12, so lunch time is at home, we're aiming for it to be around 12, and so we all stop what we're doing, we can have lunch all together since we're all home. And
Yeah.
sometimes family meals are something that families just have a really hard time making happen, and now because we're all home and we're cooking more or having things delivered, we can sit around the table and turn off the screens, put away the phones, and just like be with each other. And then after that, it could be a chunk of time that's no screen time, right? Make sure that you have some like creative free play time, or it could be and make sure there's a chore time. Our list has a like a 1 o'clock chore time because we're all home using everything more, so things are going to get dirtier and there's going to be more dishes, and they can sometimes even help with cooking. I found an online class, and my kids helped make dinner lasagna one day. So
Yeah.
as part of their creative time, they were cooking, and we had food for a couple of days after that because
Exactly.
they got in there. So then you can have another exercise time, some more like non-screen academic time, and then kind of wrap up before dinner. Again, have a dinner time. And I think having your rituals and establishing some things that you can help transition you is going to also be helpful for families, especially
Yeah.
if there's special needs where transitions are hard with ADHD and autism, or and even sometimes with learning, shifting gears, back and forth. You want to do whatever you can to, symbolize, okay, this is the end of the academic, day. We're going to begin the family time now. So that
Right.
maybe that could be a walk. And we've been done so many more family walks than we ever did before. So speaking
Right.
of opportunities, that was another opportunity that we have taken to get out there and enjoy. When it's not raining, we're able to get out and enjoy the sun, the fresh air, get outside of the house and move. And that's, so critical to all of this. And we come back, and then maybe 6 o'clock, we do dinner. And then, 7 o'clock, maybe a little bit of, family fun time before bath. And then bedtime is the same as it was before, eight, somewhere between that 8 to 9 or whatever. But then we have, as a parent, I know kind of what is going on, hour by hour ish, chunk by chunk. And then, I know I can have those times when I need to step away and work too, because they're busy, with their work. And even if I have to, be close and keep an eye on things, they know kind of what their like what the expectations are. And it helps
Yeah.
children feel like they have some control too.
Absolutely. And I think, I've talked about this with a couple other people through these last couple of weeks, and
Mhm.
we always emphasize, especially in therapy, the importance of the routine as opposed to the schedule, because
Yeah.
even though there is like a time frame usually attributed to that, there is that flexibility because you're just going to have those days, right? Like there's
Right.
going to be those times where it's harder. But I think
Yeah.
but you're right that I speak as a ADHDer. There's part of me that rallies so hard against structure, and yet when I have structure,
And you have it.
I'm in my golden zone. I'm doing so good, and it makes me feel better, and it makes me more productive. And same with my kids, like
Yes.
it's the exact same thing where like then otherwise they could spend a lot of time trying to like push for their agenda, but they're like, well, basically I know.
Right.
Because they'll even give me the look. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, can I have the iPad? And I was like,
Right.
"Hey, is it 6 o'clock?"
Right.
And then they're just like, "Okay," and they
Yeah.
go on to do the thing they were
Oh,
supposed to do.
right,
So,
right.
I think it's really important, and,
Mm,
and of course, the challenge is if you are trying to get work done as well, so I
yeah,
think you need to structure that schedule, even if it's slightly off of your like school schedule, you just need to structure it so that it also works for you. But
right.
that's why the
Mhm.
routine, right? Like so if it's in general that's what's happening, but then you have one day where you have like a deadline or something, or
Right.
you're behind on your notes, I don't know.
Right, right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You get
Yeah.
it done. And so but I agree with you that it keeps kids occupied, and then you tend to get less of those acting out behaviors like the
Yeah.
whining and the like amping
Mhm.
up. And I know even for like mine the other day, I could tell like my son was having a really tough time. And because he was like, all of a sudden, there was just lots of fighting and yelling, and everything was tears. And I was like, okay, we need to change it up. So him and I went for a ride. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so we had a nice little ride. And, it's just so that's where the responsiveness comes in, right?
right.
But that
Um,
routine still is so helpful.
yes,
So
it
I like
gives it
that.
yeah, it gives kind of a framework that you can work from and that they can work from, and then
Yeah.
when, speaking of control, that's one of the things about anxiety that, that takes over, most of, I believe that children's behavior, all our behavior is really a way of communication. I mean, it's a way of communicating, and
Mhm.
if that energy is just getting bottled up and built up and it's coming out in these, in ways that are not fun to deal with as parents, a lot of it can be related to that lack of feeling of control. And this whole situation, has created that for us collectively. There are so many things that we used to control or we thought we had control over that we
Yeah.
don't. And so it's kind of, embracing and saying, okay, we don't have control over that right now, or we can't change that. We do have to stay home right now, but within our home, we have more control. And as parents, we help, decide, and we help shape, and we help guide, what's going on inside the home. So where we do have control, we should embrace it, and we should really like, relish it. Because outside
Mhm.
the doors, there's so much that we don't
Nothing.
have control over. And so if we can, we should.
And that's such a good point. I think for if we think about, I mean, how we're feeling and the anxiety we're having and like feeling kind of not in control of things, it's even more so for children because, we
Yeah.
are the benevolent dictators who decide that what's best for them. And, I agree with checking in with them and everything, but we all know
Right.
like we are still the benevolent dictators. And
Right.
but I think that's a great point to remember that when you're seeing those behaviors, when you're seeing that
Yeah.
acting out, like, okay, this is what's going on. And even though it's making me insane right now, I'm going to
Right.
try to, how can I address that? So
Absolutely.
that's great. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And, it kind of ties into the second kind of point or thing that I wanted to talk about and share. And that has to do with really embracing, your child's learning right now and their learning style. So, if you haven't been homeschooling all along and you're now, schooling from home, I think I heard it from you that we are
Yeah, schooling
schooling
from that's what
from
I was
home.
like, "It's schooling from home. It is not homeschooling." Although my husband will still say, "Wow, kindergarten is a lot of work." Like, first of all, that's a lot because he's teaching through
Yes.
he's helping with
Yes.
3 grades. And he's
Correct.
like, "Oh, wow," like, so he made a comment basically like he knows what it is to be a teacher. I was like, no.
Uh,
You've been
yeah.
provided a lesson plan. No.
That's right.
So you're
If
schooling from home, bro. You're not
exactly,
homeschooling, you're schooling from home."
and if we didn't love teachers before, oh, we love them now.
Oh, I
Oh my
love my
goodness.
teachers.
Yes. But yeah, the one of the another opportunity in this time is that we are, like, up close and personal with our children and their learning
Yeah,
in ways that even if we did homework with them or even if we, did reading with them, we're now more involved in kind of the day-to-day nitty-gritty, of their learning, for a lot of us that we may not have known and been involved in before. And
yeah,
so, especially if your child has a learning difference or, a learning struggle, and even if they don't, you know, there are gonna be bumps along the learning road, and that's really what it's all about. And so, um, this is a chance to embrace that learning style, whatever it is, and help
yeah,
them see the strengths of it and help them navigate it. Give them, start to be the voice, that's cheering them on and encouraging that growth mindset, right? That we all make mistakes and we learn from them. So that, when you hear yourself talking to them, make sure it's what you want them to be replaying in their mind as they're going to school, right? Or as they're becoming an adult. Because we know that that inner voice comes from somewhere, right? And oftentimes a lot of that inner voice comes from what we've heard all of our lives from parents, the people around us, influential, adults in our lives, grandparents and such. So this is an opportunity to plant a lot of those, or solidify a lot of those messages as
mhm.
as you're supporting them, with school. Um, Even if you're frustrated, and it can be frustrating, make sure that what's coming out and what, the energy is that I'm here with you. We're gonna get through this together. It's gonna be okay. You know,
And
we're
you're
gonna make it.
so good at that.
I try, and you can ask
I
my kids. I don't know if they would always agree, but
I well, their perception sometimes, but I was like, I
right,
know, and that's the thing, and if you don't
right.
come across that calm and that aware, I think just owning that and then coming back to it, like,
Yes,
it's a new day. You get a chance
exactly,
again. This is the
exactly,
beauty of it. Kids are very
exactly,
forgiving. And
exactly.
so you get to come back to it.
Yeah,
Something you said, it really made it, like, struck with me that I think one of the upsides as well is I know for a lot of I mean, probably more than just kids who have neurodiversity is that the structure of school doesn't always support that, and it's not the ideal structure because of the nature of
yeah,
school and just how it has
yeah,
to be. Whereas we get to really infuse a lot more physical activity and a lot more, breaks and
yes,
kind of getting away from things and coming back, and how
yeah,
beneficial that is.
yeah.
So in a way, we're really like, it's gonna be so extra beneficial for them in that way to have this time
Oh,
where they can
yeah.
see like, "Oh, actually, I do
Mhm.
so much better when I get that," and, you
Right,
know,
right. And we all have
that's an
different
upside.
learning styles. Yeah, we all have different learning styles, whether it's, visual, and so we need to see it more. And so, maybe the school provides, outline or a book so we can see it, but give your child a chance to, get a big, whiteboard or sketchboard or chartboard and say, okay, draw it. How would this make sense just for you to see it? So you can, pull away from the table and the desk and get on the floor, or get on the wall, the wall board or whatever, and let them really like map it out in the way that they might see it. You have your auditory learners, so some that just need to hear it, and so we've got so many options with books on tape, and
Yeah,
so much on, YouTube kind of that talks through, but, you can find it in different places, or maybe having a conversation. Let's sit and talk about this, maybe have your child talk it through with you. That was one of the assignments we recently did, and my older daughter loves, to teach. I mean, she's kind of a natural born teacher. And so I'm seeing just a great opportunity for her to teach me what she's learning in real time, and use that energy, right? Because if she's teaching it, then she's processing it in her best way, and
yeah,
remembering it and all of that. And then you have the more kinesthetic learners, the doer, movers, beers, right? Like if they
yeah.
can do it or act it out, or somehow turn it into a game or some kind of a physical activity, they've got it. And so, like you said, we have the opportunity to allow them to do that so much more now than maybe they would have had to fit into the box at school. And so another opportunity through this time is in embracing what they're doing, and the way that they learn. And even if it's a little bit, different than the way you learn, and it is often different than the way that you
Yeah.
learn, this is a chance to really get in tune with that, and learn, kind of learn to love it, because they're gonna need you to help them sometimes funnel
Yeah,
it, shape it,
yeah.
hone it to be productive.
Right, and I think, like you're saying, in a way, we're planting the seed, so even if, when they eventually go back to school, and
They
they
will.
will. But when they do, if they are struggling, there's also this experience of, "Hey, maybe it's because this isn't fitting how I learn," as opposed to, I don't fit in," or, There's something wrong with me." So, I don't know, I'm
Yes.
trying to find any of the upsides in this, that and I think those are the opportunities, 'cause I that is the thing that breaks my heart the most when we're seeing these, like, amazing kids come in,
Mhm.
to the clinic, and really a lot of it is because the structure doesn't support them in the way that they learn or in what they're needing just to feel, like, safe, and so I mean, it is what it is, so I'm not trying to be critical of the system, but I'm trying to say is, like, I think this can be an opportunity for them to have a little more reassurance that it's not, like, all about them not being right. It's about, like, "Hey, I'm just needing something a little different."
Right, right. And, one website I just, sent to you to pass along is understood.org. They have a lot of great resources that you can use, to understand kind of how kids learn in different ways. And then, if they are, struggling with, whether it's like a dyslexia or some kind of a specific learning disability, or maybe it's ADHD or even autism, are all kind of considered learning disabilities. There are specific things and tools that you can do to help them, um, help them navigate the system. And then as parents, we have to work with schools. And so, yeah, this is a unique time because schools would provide a lot of the services and
Right.
the structures for this. And so this is a time where thankfully, many school districts are still open, and they are still, doing the specialized meetings, the individualized, education plan or IEP meetings. And so
Yeah.
there are things that are going on right now. And so, just because things have sheltered in place doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot, communicate and navigate, those important systems. And then, possibly set things up so that, in the summer or in the fall or whenever they go back, the school district is ready to do the hands-on assessment piece that often needs to happen for
Yes,
this.
and I love that. I guess I didn't even think about that. I mean, logically, I know, like, our teachers are still interacting with, like, here anyway, and I know they are there as well, but they're
Mhm.
interacting with the students and, like, having Zoom calls, and they have,
Yes.
like, curriculum and all, they have things
Yeah.
that they're supposed to achieve every day, and
Right.
but even thinking, like, it just like, that's right. Yes, you're sheltering in place, you're not going there, but there's still support for you as a
There
parent.
is.
If you're struggling, there's still people there for you, and I mean, I have a lot of dear friends that are teachers, and I just
Yeah.
love teachers so much, and
Yeah.
frankly, after even listening to some of those Zoom calls, I was like, "Oh my god," like, I could first of all, I could never be a teacher, I lack the patience, but I'm so impressed by what they do. Because
Oh my
even the
goodness.
4th graders, I was like, "Oh, I think I would be going insane right now," but they're so good at it.
Yeah.
Listening to those calls, there is the support there, and so I think that's a great point for parents to remember, like, there's still if you're struggling or if you're needing something or, your kid's struggling, to reach out to those people that are there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I always think of it and talk of it in terms of a team. You're building the team of support that your child is going to need, because no athlete excels all on their own. There's coaches, there's often teammates, there's parents that get them to lessons, or like
Right.
it does not happen in isolation. And so, if you oftentimes, when I talk to kids, I say, you're building, you get to have a great team of people who are all cheering for you, here to help and support you to be your best. And so your parents, are going to be there for you on that, kind of day-to-day basis. Your provider, your pediatrician, your nurse practitioner, whatever, we're here also, to help guide and shape. Your teacher is a part of that team. Your special education,
Mhm.
director is part of the principal. And then, if they're in activities, those people and friends and extended family. Those are all a part of the team. So, I this is an important time to not lose sight of that, not forget those connections, and really make
Yeah.
the best of however we can hold those teammates close.
Right.
Yeah.
As you're talking, so thinking about a lot of the kids that we see that fall into this category, they do really struggle with change and transition, like you had
Yeah.
said earlier.
Yeah.
And so I guess if somebody's in that place where even though we possibly have been doing this for a month, it can be
Mm.
new for a kid who's really struggling, right?
Right. Right.
What would I guess, are there any suggestions you would give to the parent in that case of, like, how
Mhm.
to help support their child?
Yeah. Are you asking for when
So, like, if
they're still not used to what's
yeah, they're
going on
really
right now?
struggling with the fact that
Mhm.
they're not going to school and that they're not with
Right.
their
Right.
friends per se, or
Right.
that,
Mhm.
like, "No, we can't eat at 1. I don't care about your conference call. We eat at noon." Like, "We eat at noon, mom." You know?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, it's tough because, we're all kind of, still dealing with the shock of it all,
Yeah.
to some degree or another, and it's a roller coaster too, right? Initially, we all kind of had to make those changes really quickly, and then, at some points we're feeling more stable and settled, and I got this, and then the next day, everybody's crying because it's just not working anymore, or we have
Yeah.
to, reshift everything, or they're just tired, or whatever. So, I think just acknowledging this is hard. This is
Yeah.
really hard. And I get that. You want to go to school, and you want to, see your friends, and you want to get back to what everything that you've really known, as your daily routine. Um, but because there's things out there that we're protecting each other from. We have to do things a little different right now. It's good just for a season, right? Just for the time being.
Yeah.
But we will, and in it, let's make what are some things that we can do to get through this together. And so I think involving your children in figuring out, what would help them. And if there are aspects of the routine that can stay the same, by all means, make it happen. We have, like different meetings throughout the week that we've been able to just convert to Zoom meetings. So instead of going somewhere, now we at the same time, from our homes, all of us log in or Zoom in, so that if there are aspects of the routine that can stay the same, please do. Please make that happen, because then again, the child and the family, that's one thing that we can hold on to, that didn't change as much
Yeah.
as it need to. I still see those friends. I still get that connection with them, and that's one of the things I know my older daughter is really, has her ups and downs with not getting to see her friends, and so it's like, okay, let's get a Zoom or a FaceTime going so that you can connect with those specific people when you need it, and just build
Yeah.
that into the routine, um, as much as you can. Giving kids a chance to be involved, um, is big.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think, like I was saying, even this week when or I guess what week are we in? Yeah, I think it was this week. It might have been last week, I don't know, they're all blending. But when my
No,
son
I
was
know.
really struggling and he was having a hard day and, like, it's like something would happen and then it went away and then it happened, and I was like, "Okay, this is like the 3rd time, like, clearly something's going on," and then he's in
Yeah,
tears, and I'm checking in with him. And so I was like, "Okay, what can" "I think you're tired," like, 'cause clearly
right.
he was tired, but and some other stuff's going on, but what would make you feel better right now? What would
I
be
know.
helpful? And at the moment, he was like, "I don't know," 'cause he's
Right.
like, "I don't know," like, but then of course, he did throw out the iPad, and I was like, "Well, actually," I was like,
Right. Good
"Well, I
try.
don't actually think that's gonna be helpful." I said, "I don't think that'll be helpful, and
Right,
but
right.
what else can we do?" And so then I gave some suggestions, so it's like
Yeah,
and then ultimately we decided we just needed to kinda like a break in scenery, like, we needed to take a
yeah,
drive,
just something to go out.
and so that was
Yeah,
really helpful, but I think that sometimes we get scared to offer it because we think, "Oh, we have to go along with it," and it's like, "No." I mean, they could throw out insane stuff, and we're we're like, "No, we know
right,
better." There's that
right.
benevolent dictator thing again,
Right,
but
right.
I agree that I think when they feel like, "Oh, okay, what do I need?" First of all, it's teaching them to check in with themselves, which is an excellent
Exactly,
skill because I know adults that
exactly.
can't do that. So,
Can't, yeah, yeah,
and no shame in that. A lot of people don't because it's
yeah,
so, it's just something that's hard to do at times. So, I
yeah,
think it's a great skill to teach them, and like you're saying, I think you get a lot more um, I think it just makes it easier for them when they feel like they have that locus of control, like they have
yeah,
some kind of say in what's going on with them, and
yeah,
then sometimes you hear unexpected things you didn't expect to hear,
right.
right? And I know, like, I've had that with my kids where I didn't realize, like, they were still missing old friends and, because they were doing so well, but all of this change can bring up old
Old
triggers,
stuff
can
that
bring
haven't
up
been
old
resolved.
traumas.
Yeah,
Yes, and so
yeah,
it was like, "Oh, okay," and so then we talk first I just let her have those feelings because of course that's
right,
sad and it's
yeah,
hard, and
mhm,
then we talked about, okay, what are some things after that was fully supported. We don't
right,
rush that.
right,
But
right,
then it was
right,
like, "Okay, what can we do to make you feel more connected to either your old friends or to your new friends?" And
yes,
like you said, I talked to somebody else about, the I think it was last Friday around kids and, like, what to do, and, this was something that came up too, is, like, letting them connect to their friends just like we want to,
yes,
and so my kids
exactly,
are doing those either doing Zoom or FaceTime calls with their friends, and they're having
yes,
little FaceTime play dates,
yes,
and it's amazing. It
beautiful,
really helped their spirits.
Oh,
And
yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
your kid isn't wanting that, but
Mm.
something like you're saying, something along those lines to thinking like, how can I give him, or her what they're needing right now in a way that's still similar, but even if it has to be a little different.
Right, right. I liked that you also brought up the connect, right? The connecting with the child in the moment too, because
Yeah,
if if some behavior or some emotion is happening, if you can kind of connect with it first, then you can move forward once you've made that
right.
connection with them. And again, it's an opportunity to, just today, we had, the little one had a meltdown, and I just pulled her on my lap and just held her until she was, until we were ready to get back to work. Because,
Yes.
yeah, sometimes you just need to let those tears out, and sometimes you just need a hug or a cuddle or a touch. And, especially in this time when it's, social distancing, right? It's really physical distance. We really need to make sure we're social connecting,
Yeah.
in some creative and unique ways, but make sure we keep those connections.
Yes, and I think that's a great point too, sometimes it's just that they need to cry it out or get it out, and, I mean, I think we as adults have that too, some more than others, I get it, um,
Yeah.
and I had that even with my youngest as well because there was kind of this awareness that her birthday, even though it's not till next month, most likely we won't get to do what we originally planned.
Plan to do.
We're not gonna be able to do what we originally planned,
Right,
but
right.
I always worded a little nicer to her. But
Yes.
no, but she was really struggling, and so that was just yeah, just holding her and having those tears and just really empathizing with her. And then it's like she had that place and again, we stayed in that moment, and then we talked after I could tell, like, she'd kind of like you kinda get it all out and you're kind of at that
Yes.
point and you're like, "Okay," because you don't wanna rush that. I think that is
Yes.
not good, right? But and then you get to that point and you're like, "Okay, so now how can we what can be the upsides? What are the fun things that we can do and how can we, maybe celebrate it later?" Or whatever it is, like figuring it out for them with them.
With them. Yeah.
But I think that's a
Yeah.
big piece of this too. And
Yes.
Paul says, "Hats off to all the people who have minor kids at home on top of everything else." His kids
Yeah.
are grown.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And sometimes, even with grown kids, many are coming home, like from
yeah.
college or whatever, right? So they're even as adults or older kids who either are coming back home or they're still home, they're gonna need you as parents in a way too,
And I
to help them navigate this in a slightly different
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I think that's the thing, like, maybe yeah, in a way, I think
Mhm.
the younger kids can test our sanity. I
Yes.
don't know. But at the same time, with the older kids, what I'm hearing from people is this concern about their safety and their well-being. And
Yeah,
also, if they're having to quarantine separately, like if, for
yeah,
whatever reason, that is
right.
such a stress for parents. So I think it's so hard no matter how old your kids are. It's just different. It just looks
It
different,
is,
right?
it
But,
is.
and then because I even think, like, it is really hard to have kids, like, even, like, as my little one was following me today, and I was feeling kinda stressed, and I have a lot on my plate, and I was
Mhm.
walking around, and then she's like, "I'm right behind you," and it was which normally could be cute, but in the moment, I was like,
Right.
"Oh my god," like, I just need a minute.
Need a
And so,
space.
yeah, I was like, I have some things to do, but I definitely want to" and so I, like, let her know, "I will come back to you, and I'm gonna watch your dance, but right now, like, I'm just trying to get through the day."
Right.
And, like, she got it because she knows at this point. And so she, did her thing,
Yeah.
and I think, "Oh my gosh," but then I think about like the people with teens at home and how hard that
Yes,
is too. Because
yes.
even though on one hand they can understand some things differently, I think the other part is um like their needs and what they're needing and kind of what they're feeling can feel bigger as well, like different,
Right,
right?
right. Yes, and
More
some
intense.
teens are yeah, and they're going through their own kind of stage in development, um, that's normally transitioning and normally kind of thinking about what's my future gonna look like? What am I gonna do after col or high school or college? Like, those
Yeah.
big life questions is naturally happening in a time when a lot of that is up in the air, and you have seniors graduating, from high school or from college and not getting to celebrate that in the way
I
that we
know.
traditionally do.
Normally would,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I did just toss out a website, genmindful.com is a nice one for younger kids. If you have younger kids at home, they've got some great like mindfulness-based, play-based ways to help your kids, learn about emotion and how to manage emotions and how to express them and how to communicate and navigate, different feelings and relationships. So that's my what I like to share for the younger kids, and then for school age and teens, I think Mindful Schools, let me send that now, is another really good one. And parents actually, they have got great training that is like, and this is a good time to do it because if you can do it kind of self-paced on your own, and you learn mindfulness first for yourself as a parent, so that you can be parent more mindfully and then help your child learn those mindful tools as well. And
Right.
one of the powerful things that I'm discovering and sharing around ADHD is that mindfulness is all about attending in the moment, and being in tune with emotions and feelings, and being connected to one's body, and body self relate regulation. And if you know autism and ADHD aren't challenges or differences in being present in the moment, uh, attuning attention, or controlling attention to where you want it to be, and being able to regulate emotions, you know mindfulness kind of addresses all of those things. And so that those are a few of the practical websites that I've been using and sharing and finding to be really, really helpful. And one kind of question I wanted to kind of ask you is, how can I'm generally making referrals to speech therapists, occupational therapists, psychotherapists, to support families and children in day-to-day life. And now all of that is having to happen online and through
Yeah.
telehealth and video. So what advice, to share in helping parents and families continue therapies that have been going on or find new options in this
Yeah.
time?
So first off, I just want to say all of the links that you shared, I put into the chat. So if people are watching the videos, they'll or they're listening, if they're listening in a different capacity, then they can go and look and it'll be there. But yeah, that's a great question. I feel that when you're talking about a lot of the healthcare providers, and I know there are going to be exceptions to this, but my experience is everybody has transitioned to online. So I know for us, like I was already working online, having made the move, and my staff already would do like some online sessions. And I know,
Yeah,
and this is something that I've had discussions with my staff is, you know, our preference is to be in person. It is also mine. I love
yeah,
being in person. I'm an
yeah,
extrovert. I love it. Uh,
yeah,
but we know that the research shows that the preference doesn't actually make it better. So it's
right,
the research shows that it's just as effective to do online healthcare or support or therapy as it is to be in person. So even though we may prefer it, right now we
yeah,
just don't get that option, right? So
right,
I feel that almost everyone I know has transitioned. And if you happen to have a provider who hasn't, I mean, this is the hard thing, right? Because like when you have a kid who's used to a certain provider and or they've been with them for a while, like I know that continuity, and I really believe that that continuity is important if it's a good working relationship.
yeah,
But I would say that if they're struggling, like it can be a temporary thing, but I think you should find somebody who is willing and able to do the online support as well.
that's
We
great.
have, you know, we have it's like we understand that we want them to have that continuity of care, but I do think there are times where it's like, okay, I need something else. And I think like we're offering video chat. There's always text therapy. There's, some text chat therapy. There's
Mhm,
phone therapy, and then there's video, right? So there are three different kind of modalities. And
right,
I think it depends on the age because obviously for younger kids, I feel video is really the only way that's going to work.
yeah, yeah,
And then but like for teens, like text therapy, heck, that's like their
That's the
It's
way
like,
they
that's
communicate.
actually their second language, so that's
Right.
fine, you know? So it's like, you gotta figure out what modality works for you. I really feel most people have transitioned, and I know for us, like, it's been a really smooth transition, and we use a program that is HIPAA compliant, and so
Right.
I think that if you really check in with those people you were seeing that maybe initially they couldn't, but everybody is doing that, and so don't go without the support because we've been hearing from people like, "Oh," like, they come every week, but then it's like, "Oh, I don't know how that's gonna work," and it's again more change and anxiety
Right.
provoking, and it's different.
Right.
And so they're like, "We'll just wait." And at first I was like, I don't think it's gonna be 3 weeks because initially it was that 3-week order,
Right.
and so we're like, I don't think it's gonna be 3 weeks." Okay, well, you get to choose. It's your life.
Right.
You get to be in charge of that. And then it's
Right.
like, as these weeks have gone by, now all of a sudden they're coming back like, "Okay, like, let me try it
Let me
because
yeah.
this is gonna be a long period of time." And I know that sometimes people like white knuckle it or they're like so in the thick of it that they just can't imagine reaching out. But I
Yeah.
really encourage people to do that because I
Yeah.
hate when people go through so much suffering, additional suffering needlessly because it just feels overwhelming to get the support. And I find that once they call or once they have a session, and I've heard this from a lot of my
Mhm.
therapists this week where she had to do a phone session with someone who was an adult, and he was like, "Oh, this was great." She was like, "How was it?" Just checking in, and he was like, "This was amazing." And so it's like one of those
Mhm.
things where, like, you might think, "Oh, I can wait," or "I don't know how that's gonna be," or "I don't that feels weird." But then you try it, just try it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, "Wow," like, yeah, then maybe that was different, but sometimes you're like, "I really needed that, and I didn't even realize how much I needed that."
Right, right. That's incredible, and I mean, even in healthcare, we struggled to get the video visits prior to this, but as soon as this hit, we're transitioning, and just this week, we have all the tools, the iPads that we need and the programs that we need up and running. Go, right? So
Absolutely.
sometimes the necessity of the situation pushes things in ways that naturally would not have happened or would have taken much longer. But as people, as humans, we are resilient, and we figure things
Yeah.
out. And people, who are in these fields and these areas want to continue to serve, want to continue to help, and
Yeah.
know that it's really, really important to not just have it disappear for X amount of time. And so, thank you for that encouragement. I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And sometimes out of these really tough times, like you're saying, that innovation happens. And so like
Yes.
we might resist it because we're like, well, I like it this way. Like I like seeing people in my office or I like doing this, or both
Yeah.
from the provider standpoint and also from the client standpoint. But it's
Right.
like there's not that option. Taryn had wrote in that she works with kids with autism, and so
Oh,
many of them are responding well to video sessions.
that's
And
wonderful.
I know, and that's the thing, because
I
I
love
am in
that.
a lot of, like, therapist communities, and I think initially when we were when people were still in the place of, like, we
Do we,
could
don't we?
transition. Yeah, exactly, like, "Okay, we'll offer it, but we'll make it optional based on what people want," and it was like, "Oh, but how are we gonna work with kids?" And at first I was like, yeah, like, because my specialty, I mean, I've worked with kids in the past. My
Mhm.
specialty is marriage counseling and with adults.
Right.
And so I'm more with adults now. And I have other therapists that I work with that see younger kids. And I was like,
Right.
oh, how that's going to work. But as time has gone on, there have been a plethora of resources around how to support, younger kids and how to still engage them and still have it be effective, because that's the thing, we always have to be assessing, like, if this isn't effective, then let's not do it, like, that's not
Right.
helpful. It's supposed to be helpful, and sometimes we've been giving support to the parents,
Right.
like, because
Right.
that's I mean,
That's huge.
maybe it was your
Yeah.
kid that was being seen or helped or supported by any of, not just a therapist, but by any of these providers. You can
Friends, yeah.
still call and talk to them and get some support,
Right.
like, sometimes that's what you have to do because
Right.
it is a tough time.
It is. It is. I put in Psychology Today website in the comments so that
Mhm.
um, there's a place you can go, and a lot of, like you said, a lot of places are offering different options. And one of the nice things I think that we're, seeing, and over time we can see is, sometimes a child is more comfortable in their own home or their own habitat, right?
Yes.
Their own situation. And so this is providing an opportunity to just maybe see them more relaxed and less like, with white coat syndrome where they have to go to a clinic and,
Yes.
being poked and prodded, and yet now we can kind of see how they really are. And that's what we really need to see when we're trying to assess what's going
Exactly. I'm
on.
sure you've had that where parents are like, "No, I swear, like, at home, it's different," like,
Yeah.
"This isn't what's happening at home." And it's true, and I think I don't know, for me, I look at kind of like the whole system, and I like looking at, people, like, holistically, like, what's gonna support them. And so uh the kind of interesting thing is like you're saying, you get to see more of their world.
Yeah.
And so it's really helpful. And then you can see things and like you say, they light up or they come alive in ways that they didn't before. And we're even seeing this with teenagers. Like
Yeah.
some of the teenagers who are a little more reluctant or not really in that space to not really wanting to talk or
Open
feeling
up.
resistant.
Sure,
We're
sure.
seeing like a lot more openness and I
Yeah,
think in a really good way.
I
So
agree.
I think it can be really beneficial. And that's the thing where it was like, ugh, if we just wanted to keep our old ways, we're like, that won't work.
Right.
They don't want to talk to me. How are we going to play Jenga or whatever it is? I don't know. Like, um, but it's true. It's true that it kind of relaxes people. And
Right.
especially for people
And
who are already feeling like, so much is going on.
right, right. Totally heightened by everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as we were kind of wrapping up, I mean, I think as I'm, kind of processing what's going on and looking forward, I think my hope and my prayer, like for us as a people, is that we would be intentional through this.
Yeah.
That even as we are, we are in some ways like, being forced to slow down and being forced to stay home or be with family. There is, I think, some really huge opportunities um, to move forward more intentionally
Hmm.
than we have been moving. And it would be, tragic if we go through all of this to just end up where we were, overscheduled, overstressed, disconnected, and not better for it. And I
Right.
think, my hope is that we can maybe discover some things that we really love about being with our families, or about, cooking more, or about being more, kind of right there with our children as they're learning, or as they're, dealing with different emotions, and dealing with different relationships, and say, we can move forward with more of this and less of that.
Yeah.
We can choose how our time, how to balance our time a little bit better, um, because we've gotten a taste of getting of the race, getting out of the race, and
Hmm.
having and making more time to fill our pots, to reconnect with family, and to really be in our lives in ways
Yeah.
that we sometimes miss out on. And so I think that's my encouragement, and hope and prayer for everyone as we're getting through this time together, that we can discover, some beautiful moments, some beautiful things, maybe some new routines, some new rituals, some new connectivity, some a new presence in our lives, in our bodies, in our homes, that we can then move forward with more intention. I choose to set up, our family schedule in this way, or our family life in this way, so that we can keep the good, keep the great,
Yeah.
um, and kind of shed, the things that aren't so necessary, and shed the distractions,
Absolutely.
shed the things that are harming us in the long run. So
Absolutely. And I love that. And I love, you know, I know that if you're struggling right now and that feels impossible for you, my hope is you reach out for help,
right.
to somebody, if there's somebody you already know or have been working with or anything, or you just reach out and get that support. But I do think what you said that I think there is potential in this, and I'm not saying it's easy. And
Right.
again, we have the roller
Definitely
coaster.
not.
Like there's a day where I'm like, I got it, and the next
Yeah.
day I'm eating spray cheese and watching Steve Harvey. It's like, like it just doesn't it that's the roller coaster. It's not
Yeah.
about it being easy and perfect. It's about saying like I'm realizing these were some of these things that I was forced into actually are beneficial for me.
Yeah.
And so I think switching it from I can't go out or I'm being forced to is switching the wording to I get to. And that's a small way to
Yeah.
kind of start that shift, that mind shift and saying I get to spend more time with my
My
family and I
family.
get to I get to reconnect to what it's like to be cooking more. And this was something I was already wanting, but it was just really hard to make it happen because everything was so much. And now it's like I really don't have much of a choice. So, and I'm hearing that from people. And so I love that. And I love, like, again, this is not great. No one wants this. This is horrible. And it's been tough. And there's a lot of trauma that still needs to be processed. But what
Right.
are the things that we can take away that we're like, okay, but this actually is good for me? In
Right,
all of
right,
this.
and I just recently, and I think and I was in a mindfulness workshop or something, and they were talking about how there's post-traumatic stress and there's post-traumatic growth, and you maybe have heard of that, being in the
Mhm.
circles, but I hadn't really heard about that concept of post-traumatic growth, and just I think the idea of resiliency through and, because of, traumas that happen, and we
Yeah,
all know people who have gone through some incredible things, and are the most amazing people,
absolutely.
because of it.
And,
Yeah.
just I know we're out of time, and thank you for being so generous with your time,
Oh,
but,
sure.
you had said something oh, that's right. It reminded me that tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be, having a discussion with my great friend, Laura Reagan, who's actually a trauma therapist, and so,
Awesome.
like, that whole like, yes, touching on that trauma because that's the thing where there we're not denying or negating that there is a lot of trauma and response that's happening. But what
Yeah,
we're talking about, like, in this is, like, how can we support our kids and what can we take away from all of this? So, thank you
yeah.
so much, Akua,
Oh,
for coming on, and I don't know. Again, once again, you're like a good Adderall pill for me because 'cause you're so calming. You're so calming, and it makes me feel better. But I think you had a lot of a lot of great insight and information, that you offered here, and so I appreciate you.
thank you, and this is a dream come true to talk with you like this as well, now that we're, like,
Wonderful.
across the country from each other.
I know, I know. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
sure.
And like I said, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, I believe. And it'll be available for replay, but I'm talking to Laura Reagan, trauma therapist. So we will be doing that. Thanks again.
Awesome. Bye.